So I want to take you back in time a little bit to start this video. The year was 2016, and Whispers of the Old Gods just hit Hearthstone. And I think for many of us, this was actually peak Hearthstone. People absolutely loved this set. The game was really becoming popular among the masses. I think an era we all see as one of our favorites in Hearthstone. And this card came out. It's Princess Huhuran, which has one of the funniest names, I think, in all of Warcraft. I actually remember fighting this boss way back in the day in vanilla Warcraft and on Courage. But at the time, it was pretty cool. Trigger a friendly minion's death rattle. You know, we love death rattles. Death rattle synergies are cool. Quite a few death rattles and Whispers of the Old Gods, including some available in Hunter that you might want to use. Classic cards like, you know, Sylvanas were around too. Could be insane with Princess Huhuran. That said, I don't remember this card getting played a ton or being particularly special even in its era. And I would say even back then that stat line as a 6/5 was probably rather premium for a 5-drop in that day and age. That said, we've come a long way in the last 7 years of Hearthstone, and this card just arrived in the latest mini set. This is the Yelling Yodeler, and boy, does she absolutely murder Princess Huhuran. Not only is she 1 mana cheaper, she's available to another class with Death Knight, a class that didn't even exist, of course, way back when. She's also got a minion type tag, but she importantly triggers a friendly minion's death rattle twice instead of once, literally doubling the effect of a legendary card from the most beloved era of Hearthstone. I think that says a lot about where the game has gone in the last 7 years. An effect that was so unique and so powerful in its era that it had to be limited to a legendary card. Now we've got a rare card that has doubled that effect. And yes, Princess Huhuran has already been eclipsed many times in the past. Hunter previously got a 3 mana card that had the exact same effect, but this takes it to another level entirely, and I think really sets the tone for this video, where we take a look at card designs and effects and power levels that have all been evolved over time. So of course, this isn't the only card that has been murdered by the Audiopocalypse Mini-Set, and I wanted to talk about a few more that in some way or another have been evolved from a design standpoint. The design has gotten more fun or interesting or compelling from a gameplay sense. Maybe they've evolved in a power level standpoint. They're just way stronger than they used to be, like with Huhuran and the Yelling Yodeler. There are various ways a card can be murdered, and that's what we're going to explore in this video as we take a look at the Audiopocalypse cards in particular. And to do that, with a fancy intro out of the way, we're going to kick back here into a little more relaxed view as we look at the remixed musician versus the rabid worgen. The worgen showed up in 2018, I guess it was, with the Witchwood expansion, which introduced Rush, which obviously that has changed the game in some enormous ways. And clearly they weren't pushing things too hard back then in regards to Rush minions, keeping the stats pretty straightforward at 3/3. But nowadays, 5 years on, which I can't believe Witchwood came out 5 years ago, that's crazy. The Remixed Musician is now a neutral card, not even a class card, and it's not just a 3/3 with Rush, it also gains extra keywords as well in hand, and I was too lazy to put together graphics for this, so I'm writing the words on here. It doesn't get all these. It just gains either Lifesteal, Divine Shield, Wind Fury, or Poisonous, which, needless to say, those really increase the value of the card enormously. Particularly Divine Shield is kind of like just getting 2 rabid organs in a lot of cases, taking a free trade on board. So really, I mean, it seems simple. It just adding an extra keyword may not feel like much of a change, but think about how big some of those are. Poisonous makes this able to kill anything. Divine Shield takes a clean trade. Lifesteal is probably the weakest of the set, but still sometimes could make a difference on healing. And then Wind Fury is actually pretty decent, being able to kill 2, you know, smaller minions in a given turn as opposed to 1. So all of these really do advance the Remixed Musician. And the crazy thing is, this card still sucks. It's not even close to good. The Rapid Worgen I don't remember being especially great in its era either, but the Remixed Musician is still really bad. So this is a case where the power level has been ratcheted up quite a bit, but it's still well within the reins of modern day Hearthstone. Does not particularly feel like troublesome power creep or anything of the sort to me. It feels like a fine card to toss in these days. We've got much bigger and crazier and scarier things in Hearthstone. This certainly doesn't feel like much of a problem. So moving on here, we've got the Fanboy, dual class card for Priest and Druid. I haven't really played around with this one much, but it definitely evolves from the Kul Tiran Chaplain. This is a card that a lot of people probably won't even really think about or recognize much. This one kind of slipped into one of the core set reworks or Priest reworks or something along the way. I don't actually know how old this card is. I'm not looking it up right now either. Somebody feel free to tell me in the comments, but I think at least a couple, 2-3 years old at this stage, at least I would guess. And that one just gave a minion +2 health. But now with the Fanboy, sacrificing only 1 health on the minion itself, you now get to give +2 health, and you get to give lifesteal as well, which of course a targeted lifesteal can do some crazy things because you can put it on AoE minions like a wild pyromancer, cleave minions, just a really big minion for instance. So that lifesteal can go a really, really long way when it's on a targeted effect like this. But also, if you want, you don't have to go for health at all. You also got flexibility here. Now you can go for +2 attack as well. So sacrificing only 1 health here opens up so much more potential power for this card. It can do crazy things with plus attack, being more aggressive, taking trades, and then crazy things with lifesteal, of course, creating some big heals. Now, this is not the only card, though, that the Fanboy has sort of murdered. There are actually also some old school neutral cards as well that this kind of just absolutely steps all over. You guys probably remember Dark Iron Dwarf if you played Hearthstone back in the day. This was in Zoo decks really long ago, but also a really staple arena card. This thing was absolutely nuts in arena. A solid 4/4 body here. With this attack upside can really help you take some great trades with small stuff into bigger stuff. The Fanboy, of course, not only gives the +2 attack, but it's permanent attack on the Fanboy. It's actually temporary on the Dark Iron Dwarf. It only lasts for a single turn. The Lance Carrier did make the attack permanent, much like the Fanboy, but of course sacrifices some stats. It was only a 1/2, and that's from the Grand Tournament, by the way. So Lance Carrier actually did get played a little bit too in some aggressive decks. A +2 attack was valuable. That has proven to be a successful buff throughout the years of Hearthstone. We like dealing damage, so that has worked well. But of course, doesn't have the flexibility of the choose one like the Fanboy. Now, those are neutral cards. You do expect very often for class cards to ratchet things up a little bit, but also, you know, these cards are basically 8 years old at this stage. So of course, the Fanboy is going to be stronger than either of these. I think it's totally fine that it's a little stronger than the Kul Tiran Chaplain as well. I don't think Fanboy is a scary card and unhealthy card in any way. And again, actually more fun and more strategic because you have these decision points built into the card. So you're thinking about more ways to play it, and that utilization can add some layers of depth and strategy. It's still a pretty simple card at the end of the day, but every little evolution of design like that helps make Hearthstone, I think, a more fun game along the way. So next up, this one's kind of crazy. A fairly recent card here we're taking a look at. It's Soldier's Caravan. You may remember the Caravan set of cards from Forged in the Barrens, which is really only a couple years old at this stage. That came out in 2021, just recently rotated, of course. And the Caravan cards all had this effect that read, at the start of your turn, do a thing. And of course, start of turn effects like that are really hard to get out reliably because it gives your opponent all this time to kill it. In particular, you know, this didn't have a particularly meaty health total either or stat line as a 1/3. Now, notably, this does give 2 Silverhand Recruits when it works. We're talking about the Jukebox Totem in comparison, which does only give you the 1 Silverhand Recruit. But more importantly, it's at the end of your turn, which is obviously a so much better feeling design because you're not risking it all with the opponent. And although the payoff is smaller, the payoff is still going to happen more often in most cases with the Jukebox Totem. Also, just the higher health total here helps these sort of minions stick around for longer very often. Obviously, you sacrifice some attack given that this is a totem, but that's another interesting angle because it adds dual utility for this card. Instead of having a card that is limited for one very specific use case, which if that use case fails, if Silverhand Recruits don't become a viable deck archetype, then your whole card is useless. In this case, you've kind of got a backup plan, a contingency here, some redundancy built into the card, so it's more likely to find a home and find use, which I think is nice when you're opening cards in packs. You want to be able to play them and do cool things. So you've got both Silver Hand synergy and you've got Totem synergy, which is pretty cool. And another great benefit of the dual class aspect, giving cards this kind of double life. So I love the end of turn evolution here. I think that's really awesome. And I love the dual utility. I think both of that makes this card feel so much better to play. I know the Caravans were such frustrating cards to play. So although these don't compare 1-to-1 on a power level basis because of the number of recruits being summoned and so on, I think from a design standpoint, the jukebox totem certainly feels like it has murdered the Caravans here with that end of turn instead of start of turn. So our final card here is for the popular Pixie and Blackwalled Pixie, and this is a great one because it's quite clear the Pixie is referencing the previous Pixie here from the Witchwood 5 years later. In this case, it is now a Druid card instead of a neutral card, and it is now 2 mana instead of 3 mana. Matching stats for its cost there. And that's not a problem. We do, expect class cards to get a little extra boost over neutral cards, because obviously when you have a card in the neutral set, it's much riskier from a design standpoint. More things have access to it. There might be more ways to break it if they have some kind of crazy hero power. So normally you tuck these sort of more powerful versions into a class because that class does not have some way to exploit the bonus unfairly, right? So the crazy part with this is specifically in Druid to exploit the unfair bonus that Druid currently has in its hero power builds. So it's kind of done the opposite of what you would normally do by moving a card into a specific class. So many times we've talked about like, oh, this card's way better, but that's okay because it's a class card and that's why it's here, and that limitation was important, and that's how they control the power spikes possibilities here. But this time they just leaned into it and they said, no, we made Druid all about hero powers, so we're going to take this neutral card that probably wouldn't be too scary in any other class, but is really scary in Druid with their crazy hero power scaling these days. And we're going to use it to support the archetype as opposed to shy away from it. So I thought this was kind of a cool flip of the script. I still think it's pretty scary. Hero Power Druid is not actually a great deck right now. Druid is better off doing like big, crazy, scary things. And in general, Druid is not super strong at the moment, but not through the Hero Power package at all. So turns out that giving Druid access to this crazy, scary card in the modern era with all these Hero Power things, still fine. It didn't actually cause any problems at all in the meta. So, and I don't think they'll get more like Hero Power support moving forward. So pretty crazy twist on this one in many ways. Not what we would normally expect to see, but still worked out just fine. And there you go. Those are the murdered cards from the Audiopocalypse Mini-Set. I have to say, actually, there were a little fewer this time than normal. Typically, the mini-sets are actually the place we see the most cards that have familiar designs that have evolved through the years. It seems like often they just go look at old cards and kind of tweak them for the mini set, boost them in one way or another. Seems like that wasn't done as much this time. Much more unique designs across much of the mini set. So a smaller list than normal, but still I think some really obvious and deliberate examples like the Yelling Yodeler, and some more nuanced examples as well that still provide some cool insights into how design can change over time. So curious to hear your thoughts on all of these cards. Curious to hear you waxing nostalgic about the old eras of Hearthstone and maybe some simpler, lower power times. Share all those thoughts and more in the comments. Thanks much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.